Hi everyone, today we will present you The Prince by Machiavelli with my team. To answer the first question, we will study the merger of Disney and Pixar. So in May 2006, the Walt Disney Company acquired Pixar. Pixar is a computer graphic animation company and the Walt Disney Company a film studio. So both merged and Pixar became a subsidiary of Disney. Disney had managed efficiently the transition in the following way. So first, it asked Pixar to what they could improve the underperforming division of Disney. Secondly, Disney did not want to destroy Pixar. In order to make the merger successful, Disney has accepted the culture of Pixar as part of its strength. Pixar's employees were able to maintain their old identity. For example, they were able to wear the clothes they wanted. Thirdly, Disney encouraged Pixar to alter some of its practices. It should do more than one film per year and should begin to make sequels. Finally, Disney decided to bring the money and he had to distribute, and Pixar had to provide the creativity. So this example of merger and acquisition leads us to the following question: how to make mergers and acquisitions successful?
Now, looking at question 2, how the text at hand suggests a possible answer to the question. According to Machiavelli, the most important factor to successful merger and acquisition is the CEO, or in his words, the prince. However, Machiavelli goes into more details. The CEO should gain power with his own ability or virtue as opposed to financial capacity, fortuna, if he wants to be respected by the new workers of the acquired firm. New workers should be dependent on the acquiring firm to ensure their loyalty. The CEO should do immoral things if needed, as we live in a competitive world. This to ensure the prosperity of the firm. In his words, nonetheless, a prince ought to inspire fear in such a way that, if he does not win love, he avoids hatred. A great CEO can never remain neutral. Reputation and public image are important. However, it is better to appear virtuous and deviate than to always be virtuous. He should also be able to detect talent and surround himself with competent people while avoiding flattery. He ought to be mindful of external pressure. For this reason, a prince ought to have two fears, one from within on account of his subjects, the other from without on account of external powers. Here, we can say that the external environment of a merger is just as important as internal context. For example, how strict the supervision of the government is concerning mergers and acquisition plays a role in its success. Now looking at the Disney-Pixar merger. First of all, a prince who becomes a prince by the favor of the nobles ought, above everything, to seek to win the people over to himself, and this he may easily do if he takes them under his protection. Here, Pixar employees were able to keep their previous health benefits, and Disney kept their promises to make the Pixar over the merger. Second, hatred must be avoided, as Machiavelli said. It makes him hatred above all things to be rapacious and to be a violator of the property of his subjects. Pixar was able to keep its distinct culture within the new bigger company, which helped reduce discontent among Pixar employees as well as Pixar fans. Thirdly, a prince, therefore, ought always to take counsel, but only when he wishes and not when others wish. He ought to be a constant inquirer, and afterwards a patient listener concerning the things of which he inquired, meaning that there is need to be open towards outside opinion and advice, although in moderation. Here, the CEO of Disney, Iger, asked Pixar for help in areas where it struggled and where Pixar excelled, improving the relationship between the two sides. As a result of all this, the merger was largely successful financially and publicly. The building of trust made Pixar more open to adopt some of Disney's ways, notably when it comes to producing sequels, something Pixar wasn't open to doing before the merger.
Question 3. Here the first reading that we are analyzing is the Elements of Public Choice by Tulloch. So to answer our question, how to make mergers and acquisitions successful, in Tulloch's point of view, external factors are just as important as internal factors. By external factors, we mean customers and government, and by internal factors, we mean workers of the firm. According to Tulloch, the politician selects policies with the idea that his customer, the voter, will reward him in the next election. Here we mean that once the merger is done, the firm should try to maintain the previous customers, don't distance them. In the Disney-Pixar case, Disney made very few changes to Pixar so that the customer base would not get affected. This explains partly why this merger was successful. Another important point made by Tulloch is the government intervention. In Tulloch's words, there are many areas where the government has been called in to supplement the activity of the private market by regulation. In this sense, each country has its own regulation for mergers and acquisitions. For example, in Canada, the Canadian Competition Bureau investigates mergers that may lead to concentration in the market. Government intervention may reduce firms' profits, but may have more desirable results for customers. Therefore, government intervention can negatively or positively affect mergers and acquisitions. Also, we are analyzing similarities between Tulloch and Machiavelli. The most important similarity is that both authors view humans as naturally selfish, in this sense that they would consider this selfishness in people in all the decisions related to the merger, decisions that could affect employees and customers. The difference between these authors is that while Tulloch sees that a merger could be more successful if it's not only handled by the CEO but by other entities such as the government in a case of an inefficient market, Machiavelli would say that in case of the merger being seen as a positive thing, then the CEO should handle all the responsibilities himself. We also analyze the word of the gift by Godbout. Here the answer to your question would be that social relationships among employees are important for a merger to succeed. In Godbout's words, business would rapidly founder if their employees did not give more than their salary required. This would mean that workers need more than just financial stability for the merger to be successful. They need a good working environment to keep them motivated. In the Disney-Pixar case, we saw that Disney let Pixar keep their culture, which can also explain partly its success. In the second point, where Godbout mentions that the individual becomes egoistic and relates only to the market, here we can see the importance of the employees buying the merger situation. If employees are not on board with merger, we will see more of the free riders mentality. If you do not treat people as people, they will react accordingly. In the Disney-Pixar case, Disney let Pixar employees keep their fantastic health benefits and weren't forced to sign contracts of employment in a way that kept them motivated to not to act as free riders in the merger. Another point made by Godbout is about breaking and renewing ties with others. Here, we see that the heads of the company need to be suitable for a merger to be successful. Otherwise, breaking ties is necessary. As shown in the Disney-Pixar case, the merger was not possible until the CEO from Pixar was changed for Bob Iger. The main difference between Machiavelli and Godbout that we were able to identify is that for Machiavelli, the most important factor in a merger is the CEO, but for Godbout, is the social relationship between workers. Also for Godbout, we said that people need more than financial stability, but for Machiavelli, he sees workers just as a means for production. Another difference is that Godbout believes in a social element to be important, but Machiavelli, he only sees the power-economic relationship. He would not care about the social element in a merger. Also, Godbout recognizes the importance of breaking and renewing ties with others, in this case, in order to have a good merger. But for Machiavelli, haters would only matter if they are influential people. One thing where Godbout and Machiavelli agree on is that it is always better to avoid hatred, in this case from both workers and customers, in order to have a successful merger.
So now we're going to identify the assumption and ethical implication of the various answers. The first one is concerning Machiavelli. Its main assumption is that the end justifies the means. So the prince, or here CEO, should do everything in his power to maintain his control over the factors affecting the success over the merger and acquisition. But it does raise an important ethical stake, using employees as pawns. So seeing employees as mere resources. An example of massive layoffs during company transitions. During the Disney and Pixar merger, there had been layoffs, not just to raise the profit margins, but because there was some duplication in the jobs concerning the production pipeline in the animation process. So here again, they had to have some layoffs, and they considered more the employees as duplicates instead as humans who are entitled to their jobs as they have been for years. The next author is Tulloch. Its main assumption is if private markets become so inefficient, it can justify having the government intervene. But we should not assume that just because the market failed, that the government would be more efficient if it took over. So in the case of merger and acquisition, if the private markets become so inefficient in handling them, it can justify the government actually handling this entire activity. But that's really an important ethical stake. We know that the government is not a perfect entity, and there could be corruption of the government officials in allowing mergers that would clearly negatively impact competition in the market. So in the case of Disney and Pixar, there has not been clear or official complaints of antitrust, but we do know that because of this merger, now Disney has an important part of the share in the industry of animation. Also, we know that Disney has a really important lobbying budget that goes over $7 million and has many lobbyists registered in chambers of commerce across the US. So we cannot deny its influence over the government's decision of investigating them for antitrust relation in regards to the Pixar merger. For Godbout, its assumption is that the gift system is where relations cannot be reduced to factors of power or economic interest. So in this sense, an employee would give more labor than its salary equivalent for the sense of a job well done. But it does raise an ethical stake when you do not reduce relation to an economic interest in a business environment, because then you allow personal feelings to interfere in this business relation, and you can have nepotism and favoritism occur. In the sense of Disney and Pixar, we could not clearly link this because both companies do not have official complaints of nepotism or favoritism. But for example, in Heineken, which is a really well-known company, it is well-known also for maintaining its family control and prioritizing its family members in top positions. So we can ask ourselves, are they doing this in the business interest or for their own family interest? And letting the personal feelings of having the control over the firm as a family over its economic interests and profit.
So now, with all the answers and assumptions, we come down to the best answer to our question. It was a hard pick between Machiavelli and Godbout, but we found Godbout's thesis that was closest to our interpretation of Disney's case. As indicated above in our arguments, Machiavelli talks more about the prince or CEO rather than his citizens. All advices are concentrated towards CEO to manage his state with or without force. But we know today that critical success of any merger or acquisition depends on the heart of the company, that are its employees, whose talents are used to achieve competitive advantage. After careful consideration, we concluded that in order to make a merger successful, or rather save one must consider its importance of social values and its employees. As Godbout explains how self-interest and motives are largely driven by social relationships, it is clear that CEO's abilities and people management both are equally important. Thank you for your time.